So, hello. Welcome to the first podcast for Schizophreniforms.com. I'm Dr. B, otherwise known as Schizophreniforms. And today we are talking to a lovely chap known as Mercurial Eyes, otherwise known as Martins, whose face shape has changed. There we go. And in the background of what you're seeing here is a bit of his artwork, which is absolutely beautiful. He's what I consider to be a visionary artist. And he's very talented. But we don't have a link for you to look at that. But if you see in the top left just here, we've got a link to his SoundCloud page. So, other than the intro I've already given you, introduce yourself, Mr. Mercurial Eyes.
I have been born in Latvia. To my parents who were police. I was born to police parents, and it's been great. So yeah, and that's my life. So I grew up in
give us a bit more. Like, you've done some very interesting things. Like, you've been traveling all around the world. You've lived where? Portugal, Brighton in England, which is where I live.
Okay. I'm gonna tell you a little, just like a quick background story.
Yeah.
I grew up in a small town in Latvia, and we had shitloads of fucking great adventures. And I think it's one of the basic things that just sort of like is made imprints on the character. And because there's a lot of wacky people, a lot of wacky kids doing lots of crazy shit. You know, like in England, for example, you're not allowed to. Until your parents don't want to let you go out play by yourself until you're maybe 15 or something.
Yeah, it wasn't so much like that when I was a kid, but it's definitely like that now. Like, yeah. Sorry, go on.
Yeah. So we were playing since we were like 5. We were outside. Nobody knew anything about rapists or pedos. Nothing like that. Everything was cool. Maybe there was some junkies, but nobody really know. It was cool. We were all playing in sandbox, making traps for each other, or just doing all kinds of crazy shit, burning stuff, exploding shit, and.
It reminds me. I may have once made a bomb out of, well, not a bomb, but like we got like a load of cap gun caps. You know, the little things, the little bang gun things. And we strapped like about 100 of them together in gaffer tape and then dropped a brick on it. It was amazing. Sorry, random side point, totally off topic.
But we did all of this too. We took our parents' fucking bullets, something like this. Like some of our parents were maybe in the army or something, or police, so we had bullets that we put on the railway, or we put it on, smash rocks on it, or make our own bombs, or...
we put quite a exotic upbringing.
Yeah. I mean, we were like that was one of the best times of our lives. That was like what creates characters like us, because like in other places maybe people grow up in different ways. But what was special to us, that I don't know if that has got anything to do with the fact that there was a lot of chemical emissions in this town from the pharmaceutical factory.
Really?
Yes, mate. Yeah. And so it's just like, but man, like it was really fun because like we were living on the edge almost every fucking day, and so there was sort of like some kind of adrenaline addiction just started forming.
Yeah. Looking for sort of higher and higher grade experiences, I guess.
Yeah, man. Like we were like looking for all kinds of highs, and we were like. We were playing catch and seek from trees, man. We were running from we're playing catch and seek in trees, and we're like running down the trees like little spiral stairway, and it's just like not holding to anything. It's just like being mental. And one time, this one kid like just fell from 5th floor, like 5-story long almost tree, 4-story.
Right?
Yeah. He fell from up there, and he caught himself on almost on the bottom, like on the 2nd floor. Height on the branch, and everyone was like, shit.
Kind of badass at the same time, though.
Yeah, it's like...
Well, I was going to say, if you can keep the swearing to a minimum, just in case we have a younger audience who I don't know who exactly is going to be watching these videos. I've also shed shit already as well, but just like, no more severe than that. But that's the other side point. Anyway, so what was I going to say? So do you feel that informed your later choices, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, like, it's just... it's more like just to let you know where my character comes from, where am I oriented towards, where do I find that feeling of aliveness, you know? And
Sure, yeah.
later on, I started when I was around 20. Yeah, I started parkouring and like on mushrooms, influenced by psychedelic shroom trips and
As long as you're
beatboxing,
comfortable with
parkouring.
people knowing that you're doing that, feel free to keep
Yeah,
discussing that.
it's no problem for me to let that know.
Well,
Like, I mean,
I'm going to just point out, pointing into the camera, saying you can't be arrested for historical drug abuse. Not in England anyway, so it's fine.
I don't think it was an abuse. It totally was helping me.
Well, you know
actually.
what I mean, but like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's arguable, isn't it? We are like, I'm not personally going to condone drug use, but I'm not going to pretend that it's not something I'm aware of or have experience. Like, do you know what I mean?
Look, for example, if you're suicidal, why the fuck not? Right? If you're about,
I
for
had a
example,
similar conversation with a family member saying that exact point about my own experience recently, actually.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's it. And because
And
I
about
was
mushrooms as well,
suicidal,
actually.
right? That's why, for me, I had nothing to lose. And I was there
Sure,
going
yeah.
on that edge. And I was exploring and actually rediscovering my repressed sense of humor or something like that. Because
Sure, yeah.
And man, like a lot of crazy shit was actually came about from these kind of experiences and talents that emerged from tendencies of escaping.
Sure. Which we could. There's a nice lead on to your artistic abilities and your visionary artwork. You can see in the background of the chat that we're doing now. There's a picture drawn by Martinski, as I like to call him.
Yeah.
He's a close friend of mine. And I'll probably show some other ones towards the end of the video and edit in a few shots so you get to see that the other bits of artwork. But I would describe you as a visionary artist. Do you think that is something that came to you through psychedelics, or is that something that's always been present in your kind of...
Yeah, it's something that's been
creative
always
output?
there since the moment that we had a TV in our house. And the moment that I was like looking at it like a fucking monolith when I was a kid, it was like, what the fuck is this thing?
Yeah.
And it was the cartoons, man, fucking cartoons, the very first psychedelic thing ever.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, cartoons are even these days in the more sort of closeted environment of British children's TV. It's still trippy as balls. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. And even more so back. I don't know about like Riga and Latvia. Like, I don't know what sort of TV shows you have, but like I remember watching all sorts of crazy, surreal cartoons when I was a kid, and they're less surreal these days, but there's still that element of like children are entertained by nonsense to a certain extent, and like crazy ideas, like the Rugrats, for example. You know, I think Rugrats was written on, it was either acid or mushrooms, but the kids' TV series Rugrats was written on like psychedelics and loads of. I think it might have been
really?
meth. I can't remember. I'll Google that. Hold on.
I'll
But
check
yeah.
it out, man.
Yeah, no, it's cool. It's cool. It's a very benevolent program. There's nothing particularly weird or like surreal about it. But like the creators, hold on, let me just Google it. Whilst I'm Googling it, tell us a bit more about your formative experiences that led you to be an artist, perhaps. Before we get on to the main topic of what you wanted to discuss, just tell us a bit more about yourself.
Well, I guess like I never really for me the artistry actually visionary artist sounds to me like very self-serious in my opinion. I started my artistry in comedy actually. In school I was always a clown, sort of entertainer. I said some kind of attention deprivation. And
Sure, okay.
so the funnest things in school for me was entertaining and annoying people.
Nothing's changed then.
I mean, yeah, I just do this better now. You know?
Yeah, you just got more of a refined art of doing it.
Yeah. I sometimes even joke that, man, if I had the time machine, I would go all the way back to the first grade to go through the experience again and just get better at comedy.
Sure, yeah. But then, as I would say to anyone who said a statement like that, like, you are who you are now because of the experiences you chose to have, and for ill or foul, for better or worse, like, you still become an awesome person with loads of talent. So
Yeah.
sorry, that was a bit sappy there.
Mm.
But yeah, anyway.
The origin of it all for me was comedy, and like the first thing I ever wanted to do when I was like 12, like I was thinking, shit, man, like I was inspired by a lot of stoner comedies from America, yeah. So I was like, oh my god, people have jobs doing this, laughing their ass off every day. In my naivety, I thought, shit, man, this is possible. I could be this. I could do this. Like, and it's like, if I, and this is the trick. Why I'm unemployed most of the time these days. Is I realized that when I was 12, I made this promise to myself. If I ever to have a job at all, I'm gonna fucking laugh my ass off every day. Can you believe this? It's a fucking real commitment that I've forgotten about, which just only makes sense why I can't get any other job, really. So it just, there's not much...
Okay, yeah, go on.
So yeah, it's just sort of like it's a psychic thing, or like a lot of people sort of can do anything, you know. Maybe but if you don't have any other kind of commitments, then there's nothing that you go against your odds there in yourself.
Sure,
but maybe that first ambition that I had, I actually did forget that I made a commitment to myself, you know.
Yeah. But it's obviously something that still holds a strong.
Yeah,
a strong, even though you didn't remember necessarily until, I'm guessing from what you said, until relatively recently.
Yeah.
But like, that desire to be funny, that desire to entertain people, and specifically with you, I think, like, from knowing you for quite a while, like, the thing that makes humor, that kind of concept, not just timing, but like the spin of things. Do you see what I mean? Like twisting things on their head. Like I remember really fondly walking through Churchill Square in Brighton, and you saying, "Consume, consume, consume." And just, I've got loads of fond memories of just little quirky behaviours that, like, at the time I was like, "What? You can't say things like that. That's bloody terrible." And then in retrospect, I think that's genius. Like, and I parodied and paraphrased that all myself. Like.
Yeah. Well, I had a similar moment once with my mate Chris in Bristol, and we were tripping on acid and we were walking through Stokes Croft, and it's like we kind of connected to some kind of mental telepathic thing. I guess he totally got my joke. I was just like walking through the messed up Stokes Croft and how it's like all hipsterized, you know, used to be this revolutionary place, and now there's all these fucking hipster like shops with gift cards. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then we're just walking through and I'm making a comment. Well, this is everything you ever wanted, like parental advisory and everything, you know. And he totally fucking crapped up. And then it's a sort of like a journalism type of comedy, I guess. You just like make an observation and like give it back.
Social commentary.
Yeah.
So to draw slightly more back to the focus of the sort of content that I wanted for the channel, specifically regarding artwork. So the three main things I would want to discuss before I address the brief you sent me is what informed your. Oh, sorry, I'm trying to think how to phrase it. What informed your style of art? What kind of what? Yeah. What, you know, things like that, and then we'll deal with that first. So what informs your style of art? Like, because I know that there's a lot of very profound spiritual themes, but like sometimes beyond my comprehension. I'm not gonna lie, but like it demonstrably, like there's extreme depth in everything I've seen of yours. If you see what I mean.
Sometimes it's bullshit, man. Though sometimes it's
just an illusion. Like,
sometimes just for laughs.
Sure, yeah.
So there's these two kind of different arts that I have actually.
Show one of your pieces quickly on my camera. Yeah. So this is a dragon that Martin did. It's absolutely fucking exquisite. I don't know whether did you choose consciously to give that to me because you thought it would resonate with me, or is it just like, or did I pick that? I can't remember.
I guess I don't remember because like I just wanted to give you something cool that you like. I think you picked it. Yeah, you did choose it.
Yeah, because the reason because I thought I chose it. One of the reasons that I did that was because in my visionary experiences, I've quite often hallucinated like a dragon coming out of my chest, and I associate that with being my inner demon or true personalized, what's the word? My soul sovereign true desire, and like, basically a demon within me. And I see
don't
that
think it's a
demonstrated
demon.
as a dragon. Probably not, but that's just that's how I interpret it when I'm in
Yeah,
the perspective of belief. But that's why I chose that picture, and I think it's
yeah,
beautiful.
yeah.
I still have it up in my. I'll just show it on the camera one more time. Just to show like the intricacy and the beauty of your art. It's like I wish I could show more of the pictures. I might even like load them in briefly.
Yeah, cool. I mean, this particular dragon is actually a dragon of history. You see, there's a
Okay.
little glyph, blue glyph in there, a pattern, and that is downloaded
Oh,
from a
yeah.
mushroom trip. It's from a mushroom trip, this little pattern. It started from this very simple pattern. And it shows how human consciousness evolved since the moment that we started writing due to
Okay.
psychedelic trips. And then this created this is where history began, since we started writing, recording. And
Do you mean written language or art or
Yeah.
both?
all of it, all
Okay,
of it.
okay.
Like since we started writing and drawing on the caves, that's where we started our history.
It's almost like that kind of ability to record a thought or a pattern.
Yeah.
I've thought this for ages. Actually, you probably relate to what I was going to say. Like that was the turning point that made us stop being animals to a certain extent. Like that,
Well, we
that
became
capacity,
hybrids.
it was
Yeah.
our most developmental point because we could pass knowledge down without having to be physically present or verbalize it.
We
you see what I
didn't
mean.
stop becoming animals. We just became like a novelty producing animals, I think.
Sure. When I say stop being animals, it's like animals have verbal language, which I would argue is probably more complex than we realise. But that's by the by. But like the defining quality, I think they call it the first axial age, was in the sort of pre-Roman, pre-Greek era where we started transcribing on tablets and using wax tablets and stuff like that, and then printing presses, blah 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 blah. Blah. We had it was the first developmental stage where we began our progression as something unique culturally beyond that capacity of animals, basically. Not that we did. I don't mean that we stopped being animals, but that we that gave us a developmental edge.
Mm-hmm.
If you see what I mean, because we were
Yeah,
already well
I
developed
see.
beyond the average animal at that point. But until then, we didn't have the ability to compile knowledge.
Yeah, maybe that's the one. We didn't really reflect on ourselves before.
Sure. Yeah,
We
yeah.
started becoming self-reflective, and that's
Yeah.
how I look at recording,
Sure,
and
yeah.
how I look at history, and this is what the dragon means to me.
That's
Is
cool.
the very evolutionary recording.
Mm.
You know?
Sweet. So my next question. In fact, no, we haven't actually answered my question. Like, what was the?
Yeah, it was
what was the? What is the most significant formative part of both your comedy and your art and your musical expression? What's other than just to entertain or be humorous? Like because you're very funny. You do some very, but you also do some very compelling, quite profound, like almost speeches, and your artwork especially. Like there's obviously something. Well, I'm almost like just a loaded question. Like I know that there's loads of things that you've studied for a number of years, and I just wonder if you want to give us a bit of insight into that for the video.
Yeah, I can like list them up for you. And so in the very earliest formative years, I guess it was my need to escape boredom. That's where it started from fundamentally. I was easily bored and hyperactive. I needed constant stimulation, and then later I was just sort of pushing the age further. It's like an
Does that
an
tie back
addiction.
in, do you think, to the sort of quite intense stimulation of your childhood as well, like
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah, yeah.
adrenaline level, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. The things that this I don't think I'm anyhow special with this because we had a few kids that were doing drawing because they were bored in the school, and because it was not nourishing, you know what they felt such a waste of time. So we were doing other shit in the meantime. You know,
Yeah.
it's just that some of us continue doing this for the rest of our lives because it just became such an
It was an ingrained pattern of
I mean,
behavior.
you have it, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And but then after all, like when I actually started to consider myself doing this more seriously, actually, most of my cartoons before I drew comics were suicidal, funny cartoons in the side of my notebooks in school, and there was like puddles of blood or like a white figure.
That's weird. I used to do similar things actually. Actually,
Yeah, it would just collapse.
Like
Yeah.
just like the like quite dark imagery and like little miniature stickmen demons and like quite. Yeah. Anyway, sorry. Yeah, it's about you. It's about you. Talk about
Yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, no, I can relate
the-
to that kind of like that, especially in was you when you were a teenager as well, or
Yeah.
earlier, or yeah, because when I was a teenager, like I found that like there was a very dark side that came out with the new hormones and with the new perspective, and there was a lot of stuff that like I won't go into now, but like there was formative stuff in my childhood that was then being expressed through that beginning burgeoning artistic expression, which then I channeled into music. But sorry, yeah. I was asking about you, right?
yeah.
But it's
So,
it's a dialogue. It's dialogue for now.
No, man, I understand that you relate a lot because we have a little bit sort of, I recognize schizoid tendencies in our characters. And
Sure,
what I
yeah.
mean by schizoid is the alienation, as
The-
in
the
what
split self, I
in psychology. Yeah, in psychology they call it dissociation, right?
Yeah. I've suffered
it's so-
from quite a lot of dissociation, and
Yeah.
and just for the record, like this is gonna be in my like welcome video, but I am diagnosed schizophrenic, just for the audience to know. And
Yeah,
Martin
I mean-
isn't, but you've had.
I didn't let
the-
them
Yeah.
let them diagnose me.
Yeah, it's probably for the best, to be fair. My medication and stuff, brutal on the stomach. It's really good for my mind, because I think, whereas I don't think you, I'm not belittling your experience, but I don't think you had quite as severe a psychotic tendencies as me. Like, if I hadn't have been medicated, I probably would have become, not dangerous to other people, but dangerous to myself. Whereas I think, I don't think that's so much of an issue with you. You're always very self-sustaining and quite able to get by and manage, I think.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is the thing. I'll tell you cut to the chase, where a lot of my artistry actually comes from, and it was actually quite an early unconscious fascination with mortality.
Sure.
That's why I mentioned these drawings about. I had this comic character that just developed in the school, and it's just all kinds of deaths, you know. And I was just thought I was having a laugh, but I realized I guess this is some sort of like expression of unconscious unconscious really planning death. You know, imagining
Yeah.
all kinds of possible ways to die, but it was just came about in a funny way, sort of masking it, you know.
Sure, yeah.
So then comics developed continuously about a character who is trying to attempt suicide, and his life is empty and all this. And you know, this is me at 18. Yeah, just nothing
Yeah.
really happened that much in my life. So I guess, of course, the unconscious is trying to figure a way out how to destroy meaningless life. You could compare this somehow to
Well,
the
it's
character.
the ultimate escapism, isn't it? Suicide. Like,
Yeah, but contradictory is this confrontation with your mortality is when you set yourself to that edge. This is where actually, when you're on that edge, you start to live. This is how I
well, they
felt.
often say that, don't they? It's like when you the only way is that once you've hit rock bottom, that's when you start to. Some people like will sail in the middle ground their whole lives and suffer from depression or mania or various things like that, but never really reach that low point where they consider that. And like for a lot of people that do consider that or even attempt that, like once you've done that and failed, hopefully, like, or when you've even just been able to comprehend that, the only way to go from there is progressive and upwards. Right? If you know what I mean.
So yeah. And this is the thing. It took me a few years. I didn't used to understand what causes my depression, and like I started figuring this out. It isn't just the fact. Yes, it is like when I used to do bicycle work, physical work. The depression symptoms weren't there as much, you know. So going out, going to the gym, doing some push-ups, going for a run, that helped. But it just helps to get by, you know. But what I realized.
Sorry, go on.
What I realized is the deeper elements of the depression is that the environment of lack of authentic aesthetic.
So now we're coming to the that's actually a very good segue into what we wanted to discuss today, really.
Yeah.
Or what you wanted to discuss today, and
so most of this whole thing was escape from poor aesthetics, you know, and that's how it's a very common thing that a lot of youth these days are being provoked and rebel and reject the previous sterile style of behavior and lifestyles, and then they're trying to escape into some kind of archaic or poetic William Blake-ish Shakespearean style.
Sure, or we get the exact equal opposite of like absolute absorption in technological obsession.
Yeah,
and just unable to face reality. So people live in their phones. They live in technology. Like I see that with a lot of people. Well, quite a few people I know that are sort of like 15, 18, 20 sort of age, sorry, and they are going one way or the other. They're either so deeply immersed in rejecting modern culture, or they're so absorbed in modern culture that they're unable to almost breathe in reality.
Yeah, that's the one, yeah. And so I was one of those antibodies that was, since I discovered Salvia divinorum, right, my artwork started changing. Like it was around the same time before. Like before that, I was like anti-drugs. Like I was so conditioned by my police parents, right? I was like, no, not
that's possibly a social thing in Latvia as well, or is it just your family environment, or because I don't know anything about Latvia. Really.
No, but a Latvian environment is very uninformed. There was for ages lack of real information. There was no knowledge about it, so of course, man. But for me, I started pursuing the psychedelic element in all of it. It was gradual unraveling.
Okay.
So it is
Can you
like
clarify what you mean by that, just quickly?
So in my comics, I was contemplating suicide, right?
Sure.
And then I figured out that like when I met this one new friend, he told me all about astral projections and lucid dreamings, all these perfect, beautiful ways of escape. And I guess what I felt I needed is some dissociation from the body in order to feel some kind of liberation from this constant work of being in the body, you know? Mm-hmm. And then by the time he once said, hey, there's this one herb, and it was in 2008, right? It was legal.
Yeah.
And we tried, and it's like, oh, as long as it's not drugs. Yeah, I was like that, yeah.
Yeah, as long as it's legal, that's not drugs.
So he said, like, this is going to help you with, like, astral projections, you know? Like, okay, cool, let's do this. So we do this, and I focus on that, and I did feel that I was subtly disembodied a little bit outside of my body, but was still in. But it's actually the experience was much more interesting and intriguing than that. And but
is that? Would you say that was the sparking point that drew you down this path of psychedelics?
This was the point where I started psychedelic art. And
cool.
It was still the same comic characters after, but I was drawing them sober, right? I was drawing it, but there was a metamorphosis. There was a transformation that occurred, and in my style, and it was a different psychic thing. It's like the character finally did kill himself. You know, hallelujah! It finally happened. In comics before that, the character couldn't die. He tried to kill himself many different times. He just could not die. Just the comic element of it.
Not to read too much into it, but that does seem like... No, you were about to say exactly what I was just about to say, so I'll let you finish.
Yeah, so finally the suicide have occurred for the character, for the ego. This was an ego suicide.
I thought so. Yeah, go on.
So there was a liberation from this ego entrapment, and that's how the journey sort of started, and it became ever more interesting. And so the psychedelics was the one that was sort of like saving me from depression. And throughout the years, I mean, the elements were still there, but it took many numerous of these trips and reading on it and figuring shit out. Mainly figuring shit out is what really was helping me.
Mm-hmm. So
and then,
just to ask you a couple more questions. So, like, just for the purposes of our viewers, what kind of, like, just as vaguely as possible, what psychedelic experiences have you had? What drugs? What kind of tones did they have? How have they informed your? Because that's something I wanted to talk about as well. Mm-hmm. You don't have to, but I'm just offering the opportunity.
I gladly would. I have the first psychedelic trip I guess I had was salvia. Then I started experimenting around. I think I had before that a little bit of weed, but you know, it was sort of trivial. It was just making jokes with friends. It wasn't that psychedelic. Then later on, I was like started to get curious in LSD, and that was when I was in Denmark already. Only then I first found the hippies, and I was in this boarding school, doing all kinds of arts and film and music, and it was a perfect combination to experience psychedelics then, because I had the mediums of expression.
Sure. Yeah.
And then it was one of the most hysterical laughs I've ever had in my whole fucking life the first time. And then it soon followed, and it just sort of like was pushing that trickster edge further. And it was like until I got kicked out of that school because like pushed those buttons
a little too far.
Yeah. And
so,
it was fun.
So to come back to LSD, because if you don't mind me saying, I know it's something you have a very intimate relationship with. You've had a lot of experience with it. What, if anything, is the main essence of what you've learned from that particular chemical? And how has maybe that informed your art and your personality and stuff?
I kind of always found sense of humor. Sense of humor is probably the key thing.
Levity.
For me, yeah, because it is such a vibe and trip saver, and this is the one not like I learned from my personal trip. This is what I want to share with the world too, because we have been on quite a bad trip for a long time as a whole humanity.
Sure, yeah.
So at the bottom of this, what is the most amazing thing about psychedelics, if you do it right, when you do it in an effective manner, where you got no distractions and you're being able to pay attention.
And safely as well, just like...
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like certain setting as well. I always like to emphasize that, especially if...
Exactly.
Because people watching this might hear us saying all these wonderful things about LSD, go out and try it, and not know that it's something that needs to be done very consciously and carefully. So I just thought I'd emphasize that as well.
And I would highly advise people. I mean, like, I was self-taught in most of the things, but because it's
same here. But that led to me having a hell of a lot of bad experiences before I learned to master, well, not master, but like learn to adapt better usages of the drugs.
Okay, let's say this way. Like, I agree with you. But like, the things that bad experiences, they are part of better experiences in the whole of life. Anyway,
Sure.
Like the things that if you have had a lot of extreme experiences when you have been growing up already, I guess your endurance is such that you're able to take it further. If you're faint-hearted and you are like. You have developed a tendency in your character of avoiding difficult subjects and something that you just cannot handle. Mm-hmm. Probably the psychedelics are not for you.
Sure, yeah. And also, like, because, like, for example, again, I'll spare the details, but just a little bit about my background as well. I developed schizophrenia before I ever dabbled in psychedelics, and I actually found that there was a huge risk there, but it gave me an opportunity for personal growth, and like the negativity that I'd experienced in the past, like you were saying, gave me the, because like I already heard voices, I'd already had hallucinations before ever taking any psychedelic drug, and for me it actually reinterpreted and reprogrammed the experience, because I did it consciously and willfully. It meant that I was able to, sorry, I know I'm supposed to be interviewing you, but I just thought I'd add my little 2 cents.
No, it's cool. It's cool. I like what you're saying.
Yeah, and it's like it reprogrammed my experience of, and like there was a huge risk involved, and I think there is for anyone, especially unexperienced, taking a strong psychedelic drug, even marijuana, like taking a drug like that without the right support network or without the right previous experience to inform that.
Yes,
If you see what I
information,
mean.
like inform
strength
yourself for sure.
and
Yeah,
the ability to digest it healthily and stuff like that.
yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, right. Back to what you're saying.
I also had that when I was a kid, for like when I was hypnagogus experiences, hypnagogia, when you're falling asleep.
So
Hypnagogia.
So like
when you
just to
fall
clarify,
asleep and you
hallucinations as you're falling asleep.
They're more like imaginative visions, something like that. Like I would consider
it's sort of like being partially asleep, but you're still conscious of the room, and
I would not call them hallucinations. That's not fair in my opinion, because there is such a spectrum of perceptions.
That's the name for them in Western psychology, is hypnagogic hallucinations, but they are closer, especially in my own experience, to dreams or visions. They're not like randomly generated crazy patterns or anything.
Yeah, exactly. When you say this, if you would say this to your psychotherapist, I hear voices when I fall asleep, or or I hear sounds and I see through the ceiling or shit like this. Yeah, you are like actually setting yourself up for a fucking mental hospital. But you understand that hypnagogic experience is a very human experience of experiencing psychic phenomena. This is nothing too supernatural. It's very normal.
Yeah, and I will add to what you just said. Actually, that's a very good point. It's like, I think we've discussed this before in private dialogue, and I try to talk about this all the time. Is like the difference between being insane and sane is being able to translate effectively. It's almost like knowing you're crazy makes you not crazy. Like if you can explain your experience in terms of like, even if they are sort of supernatural, paranormal, or otherwise like bizarre psychical experiences, if you can translate that into a terminology that someone who works in like mental health or something like that can digest, or even anyone else around you, if you can translate it, then
this is the point. This is how you set yourself free from these institutions. If you're able to comprehend your situation and be able to explain this as understandably, you're free. They let you out.
Yeah. And I think, again, spare details, but we've both had personal experience that is the case as well.
Yeah. It's a valuable experience. It's like, why not?
It's almost like learning a new language, or like. Do you know what I mean?
Well, this is the point that where I think we the thing is that schizophrenia, if you understand it in the essence, is like it's sort of similar to cultural relativism, actually.
Can you clarify that term just for me?
Cultural relativism is sort of like, I believe what I believe. My reality is made of my beliefs. And I believe is it's true for me, you know, and so therefore everyone's reality bubbles, personal bubbles of assumptions are true for them. That's cultural relativism.
I see what you mean.
In a similar way, sometimes schizophrenics had a hard time to relate or to others and be relatable too, because there's this bubble.
There's a distinct quality I've noticed in people that with negative impacts on their life from schizophrenia type disorders, which I think me and you've kind of got quite a good lid on, is that we're able to realise that other people are capable of having these experiences. There's less solipsism in our schizoid tendencies, if you see what I mean. Like, you're able to relate. If I say I've had a transcendent vision of God, you're not going to go, yeah, but that's not God, because only I see God. Do you see what I mean? That's quite a common trait in people that suffer quite badly with schizophrenia and schizoid type disorders, is that they don't have that insight that we all have that potential. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It was related to what you're saying with social relativism, because the idea is that, like, you know, like the in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. But if you put that in modern terms, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is a madman making up nonsense that he can see shapes, and there's all these weird phenomena that we can't experience, so he's crazy. That's my other argument towards schizophrenia.
Well, like, since I, for example, met you, got to know you, just met you, the shit that you told me in the beginning, I was like, fucking cool. I wish I had
nice.
that.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, I thought these fucking superpowers, man, the way they sounded to me, like, because when I was a kid, my mom...
It certainly felt like it. Yeah.
When I was 18, my mom told me this weird shit, like, that when I was young, she said when I was, like, really young, like, at home, a kid, 4 years old, she was standing in a bus station, and she's saying that some stranger came up to her and said, you know, your son, when he's gonna grow up, he's gonna be a psychic. And I was like, she says this to me when I was, like, 18. I was like, fucking cool.
Yeah.
So I was like, I was always into comics and the paranormal and all this shit. So all these schizophrenic stories actually, like, encounters with the paranormal or, like, psychic phenomena. I mean, they always sounded to me more like gifts. I never saw them as some kind of ailments or mind diseases. I saw them as,
I mean, like, I've spent a long time, like, kind of reconciling myself with the fact that it's not just a curse.
Yeah.
Like, and it's through interactions with people who, like yourself, think that sounds cool. Like, and, like, the experience of taking LSD and, like, having the same hallucinations. Or, like, on one of the times I've taken LSD, I found that all my hallucinations that I normally day-to-day experience dropped away. There was no tactile, there was no auditory, there was no visual extra data coming in. And I realized that that, like, a lot of that stuff that I was initially experiencing was self-generated or, like, egoic stimuli. So, like, I was reacting, it was like a hood, like, this is good. Sorry, we will come to the main topic of discussion.
Yeah, continue.
Sure. So, with the schizoid experiences and the hallucinations, I found with LSD they dropped away, and I found that when I did hallucinate, it gave me a very, very personal strength and the ability to govern what I visualized and segregate what data I wanted to receive from my conscious mind.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make any sense? So it's sort of like, just to describe briefly, it's like if you've ever played a video game where they've got, like, the ammo in the corner, and, like, you've got, like, the helmet in front of you, and it displays what your targets are, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's my brain's version of that for things that, because, like, well, a major trigger point for me developing even further schizoid, because I've always had them, but for developing further and more in depth and more vivid hallucinations was a suicide attempt, and from that point, I found that, like, I think my best explanation is that I damaged a certain part of my cognitive process, and so this gave me a way to consciously perceive my subconscious. But then over time, I trained that through using psychedelics, through CBT, through neurolinguistic programming, meditation, mindfulness, to actually, like, turn that into useful data instead of just, like, sporadic noise and background and static and crazy stuff. And it was from that experience of LSD where it dropped away and there was no hallucinations that I realized that these things were governed by where I was focusing my mind.
Interesting. That's could be very true.
I mean, I'm not saying that's fact. I'm just saying that's how I understand it. Like,
I mean, a lot of the any mind-altering experiences and non-mind-altering experiences in every day. To be honest, most of the psychedelic trips I've had, they showed me what is my mind doing. It became visible and hearable and felt to me what is it that psychically I'm unconsciously have been doing all this time. The things that when you're not tripping on these things, this process is still going on.
No, exactly. Hit the nail on the head. Go on.
So you just, like, be wary of what you choose to put your mind to. I mean,
well, you can argue, it's a similar thing with, like, body language, for example. Sorry, just quick point. body language. Like if you draw attention to your own body language or someone else's body language, they suddenly start to artificially act out because they become conscious of their body language.
Yeah.
And you can actually work them into such a state of just by pointing it out that their entire body language changes, and the entire what they're communicating subconsciously becomes conscious because you've drawn their attention to it. But you can do that with like nigh on any process that's available that isn't part of the unconscious. Would you relate to that?
Yeah, I do relate a lot to that, because this is something that becomes visible on every psychedelic trip, because this is what Terence McKenna called pre-literate mind. This is the reducing valve, or reducing consciousness valve, that keeps us being able to focus on one thing at a time in a normal state of consciousness. This reduction valve is being dissolved, and that's where we're able to see things for the arcane language of nature before we had the word text language. So we're able to see the meaning of every object, every living entity. Yeah.
I see. So applying symbolic or metaphoric meaning to everything based on. Sorry, is that sort of following?
Not
Can you
applying.
clarify? Can you
You're
clarify?
seeing. You're literally like, it's like, this is what the indigenous people say, that they speak to the plants. They don't talk to them with words. They
It's
see
like
what the
telepathic
plants.
communication.
Yeah, no, it's like visual.
Empathetic.
No,
resonance.
it's visual telepathy. You see what the plant means, or what that human being speaks with their behavior, or what the animal does and what they say with their behavior. That's a living language.
Well,
That's what I mean.
I found with that kind of thing, like, I'm less so with my son, because I have a little boy. He's like three months old, as you know. He communicates a huge amount of data, but because he's pre-lingual, and he's still learning to cognize facial expressions, but he feels your emotions very quickly. And I've had it with like my niece as well, who suffers from Rett syndrome, where she's fully present cognitively, like her mind's fine, but she's not able to speak very often, and not able to communicate in any way other than like basic sign language or like sub-vocalizations. And I find like with animals as well, and anything that doesn't have verbal communication, like you can, I don't know whether you've ever done this, but you probably have actually, but like if you visualize a phrase or like an emotion that you want to convey, you can project that to your body or your psyche or your subconscious, and then it will manifest that and act that out through whether it's your body language, your facial expression, or some thoughts, or with energetic communication. But have you ever had any experiences like that? Where
I'm like having it all the time, man.
Yeah. Anyway, so I've waffled enough about myself. It is time to discuss the brief that you sent me. So what I've got here is xenophobia versus xenolinguistics. So let's get some clarification on what you mean by those terms, and then go from there. If you're keen to talk about that.
Yeah. It's xeno is alien. That's the unfamiliar, basically. Everything unfamiliar. Cool. Xenophobia, as we know it, is the fear of some kind of, let's say, I don't know, some foreign speaker, or anybody we don't know, or maybe somebody who looks different, or something, or let's say picture even.
Or put in literal terms, fear of the unknown, I guess.
Yeah, fear of the unknown. And xenolinguistics is like, it's when you are acquired the taste for the alien. That's already it's a study
of... Is that
of
the literal meaning of that word?
No, it's a study of alien language.
Okay. So can you clarify, because like you put alien love next to it, I'm quite intrigued to see how they tie in.
So it's this term I got, it's not my own, it's something that I have conceived of before, but I've discovered a book from Diana Reed Slattery called Xenolinguistics, and it's dense read. It's a very psychedelic read, philosophical, psychological, and just artistically informative, of many artists who have explored aesthetic language encountered in mushroom experiences. Or
is that like a bit like, or is it hypoglaglia or hypoblablia, where you communicate without words but you use speech form? So like,
yeah, it's a sort of glossolalia. Yeah, there's
glossolalia. That's one.
Yeah, various types of glossolalia. There's acoustic ones, there's visual ones, and there's behavioral ones. The movement.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. So, can you run me through a bit of examples of those three?
So improvisation, dance, something that is got, like you going in a like break dancing, for example.
Yeah.
When that emerged. Or graffiti. It's a sort of continuing on the lines of surrealism.
A slight subversion of the norm.
Yes, you're subverting the traditional language and you're turning it into the alien. And so when you're doing breakdancing, breaking they originally called it, that's you're, as way I understand it, you're breaking the traditional form of behavior. You're like hacking it,
Modding.
So it's like drumming, for example. Also another form of alien language. You are speaking in the behavioral percussive language, and the trick there has always been, in order to break through into new realm, new consciousness.
We find that with musical development all the time. With this,
exactly
within that context of xenolinguistics, is like in like the 20s. You had like very big band traditional jazz, and then you got towards the 30s and 40s, you got this more unusual, and then bebop developed, and you got all these like just new developments of subtle change that, if you look over the span of 30, 40 years, it seems like a huge jump, but over time it was just that gradual subtle development of adding the foreign.
This is the one, and this is the central element, in my opinion, what is sort of saving the consciousness on this planet today, is acquiring the taste. Acquiring the taste for the alien, because the alien, the unfamiliar, is the novelty. I mean, every time a new genre, a new style of behavior, anything that you never seen before is the alien language, basically.
Cool.
And it is bringing new consciousness to our vocabulary. It's expanding our horizons of language and equipping us with more tools to be able to express more.
Just to give a subtle example, you get things like in linguistics and colloquial language, you get things like totes or amazables, or the new use of the word literal has been added to the dictionary as a point of, it literally now only has to mean a point of emphasis rather than I'm actually meaning this, because it's taken on a new meaning because of common usage, and that's a kind of a subtler example of that developing. But I was gonna lead on to another point. So, because what you were saying there sounds very positive and progressive, but then the next thing in the brief we've got here is environmental and economical disaster because of perpetual unconsciousness. Now, that I want to just say quickly, I totally know what you mean. And I see it all the time, and it's depressing, and it's frustrating to live in a world where we've got this kind of, perhaps even politically, we're trapped in, I hate to use the word paradigm, but a previous paradigm because of political pressure and like this xenophobia.
Yeah. It's sort of like if you trace it down where this all stemmed from, to me it seems like a fear of stepping outside of the nest, of the cradle that we're used to,
What comfort that
and
is,
and that involves with it all of our ego, all of the things that the ego is the central problem that we have. It's this to do with self-concept, and I'm not one of these like new age goofs who are gonna be saying like get rid of your ego.
Okay, I'm glad you said that. Yeah.
Because the point is the ego has to be healthy. Ego has to acknowledge what is our true and honest human nature. The ego has to step. That's what I mean with the society. The society really is our ego.
Would you say it's perhaps a problem of emphasis? Like
Emphasis.
we've got our priorities in the wrong place. Like we
Exactly.
we value kind of static ideas. We value
Yes.
certainty. Like that's something very much humanity has always craved. Like we look for it in psychology, we look for it in personal relationships, we look for it in buildings, for example. Like we look for permanence and stability, when in actuality that very thing causes our society and development to stagnate because we're afraid to let go of.
This is
you know what I mean?
exactly it, man. Yes, this is what because of this insecurity that we have, knowing unconsciously, knowing that there is nothing stable, there is everything is always uncertain. There is no certainty in everything. Therefore, that we're so obsessed with creating illusions of stability that we're creating some kind of tombstone for ourselves. That's the
Like
only
a-
certain thing.
like almost like a crypt, like a tomb, like what could have been.
We are killing ourselves with this, basically.
Yeah.
And creating some kind of like coffin of comfort.
Sure, yeah.
It's like we're addicted to being in this protected zone from the gravity and the harshness of incarnate existence. It's like
There's
we
also
still,
that is well, there's two things I want to come to actually. Hold on, I'll write down one of them. But like, that's also part of what makes us so profoundly developmental as a species, though, is that changing the environment to meet our needs so that we can stay in a static state of comfort. Like that, so to a certain point has progressed us to where we are in history. That's why we have like global telecommunications, stuff like that.
that's different. Sustainability. That's to sustain relationships or to sustain nourishment and.
Well, I'll
It's
give you an
like-
example of what I mean. Like earlier, I was talking to Jenny. I was talking to my fiance about like capitalism and corporatism and basically financial greed led us to a certain point. Like where in the past, for example, one of the reasons that we were able to create new technologies was because people amassed wealth and were greedy, and then were able to make these things. And as much as I hate to admit it, there was a trickle-down effect where these technologies then were passed down to the sort of layperson in a similar way to we've got a modern revolution that seems to be taking place in consciousness, spiritual awareness, personal progression, psychological development. It's a slow process, but we've got this kind of effect where, like, in the past, we had this whole concept where these things were secret. Like, like the Pharisees, for example, and the pharaohs, they were the only ones that understood the religious principles of Egyptian mythology and how they actually applied practically. Whereas nowadays, like, anyone with a computer can find out 90% of the information that they knew anyway. And then, so it got us so far as in those things were developed in private. They were developed through greed and capitalism and unsustainable processes, because we had a smaller population, we had less demand. There was nobody lived in luxury until like 100 years ago. You know what I mean? The majority of the planet were peasants. They lived well below the breadline, and there was a lot of death, there was a lot of destruction, blah 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 blah. So what I'm saying is, like, I agree with that entirely, but I think it just could be reframed with the idea that served a purpose. Does that make any sense? Or am I just waffling nonsense?
No, of course it did. Yeah, because while most people were busy digging in the earth doing farming, the upper elites, the echelons, they developed alchemy, and they had the time to focus on the things that they were sort of That's great that they did. The
Well, it's kind of like
alchemists
when we
did.
developed agriculture, for example. Like, when we didn't have to go out and hunt, it meant that we could sit around once the crops were sowed and talk about stuff. And we developed
True.
conceptualism. And
We had
developed,
choice in what to do with our time.
Yeah.
And
now,
but
yeah, sorry, go on.
because of the farming, right? It's if you're digging in the soil all day and this is your choice for your career, what your life is gonna be, then if essentially still the situation is such these days that big fucking portion of people these days are peasants.
Well,
being
like, comparatively,
not-
they're living in luxury, but, like, in modern terms, the majority of the planet is living in abject poverty. I saw a good meme
Yeah.
the other day that sort of expressed this perfectly. I can't remember who it was. It was a quote from someone who said, as soon as equality rises, we'll realise that we've all been billionaires for about a century. It's just the distribution of that wealth is... It is an illusion that that wealth needs to be kept in those isolated things anymore. That was, I paraphrase massively, but that was kind of, yeah.
Well, this is an interesting topic here. Again, I often like to return to this topic, is because I think the upper elites sort of knew this, is that when people have enough resources, therefore they have more free time, they naturally have the ability to afford to spend their time on thinking and figuring shit out. And that's up until about Berkeley, there was in California, University of Berkeley was one of the last universities that was designed to actually educate their people in order to improve society.
Cool.
Then I found this from Terence McKenna that he was saying that but then until they realize that when their citizens are being informed and educated, these people are the ones that are changing the system. They are figuring how it works, and they are able to change the system. Therefore, education standards started to change in a way to keep you distracted from actually doing that.
Yeah,
And,
well, it comes back down to control, doesn't it? It comes back down to like this concept of like someone who's has free will and is educated and is conscious won't and can't behave in such a way that isn't progressive. Because yeah, go on.
In that fact, the one of the most positive things that we have today is internet. Really, it is a sort of a manifestation of second coming of Christ. Really, the fucking UFO landing and is informing us fucking greatly. And if you're not informing yourself and you're whining about why you're being depressed, fuck you, man. Because it's your own fault.
Well, not necessarily. I would argue that quite heavily. Like kids today, they're born with a mobile phone, and it's got Candy Crush Saga, and like they're developmentally not as able to focus. Like, I've seen loads of studies in Eurozone, so.
Everyone's fucking able, man. Everyone's able. Morpheus is on every fucking corner. It's just whether you have the balls to wake up and like find another way or not, man. I mean, eventually you can play your Candy Crush Saga and procrastinate this thing that you feel you need to do until you fucking really want to kill yourself. You're so fucking caught up in Candy Crush Saga and Pokemon chasing is that you are trapped.
Sorry, yeah, that's just funny. No, I'm not dismissing what you're saying. Like, I know what you mean. But like some people, like for example, when you were first introduced to salvia, you were lucky enough to have that triggering point that turned you around. Whereas some other people don't necessarily, like for example, Google's a good example. Like if you go to Google and you search for penises, right?
Yeah.
You're going to get porn. You're going to get a plethora of porn, and you might have wanted to know what a penis is, but instead you've been exposed to porn. Or like, for example, with the targeted marketing, like with Facebook as an example. That was a bad example I just gave, but I think you alliterated my point. With Facebook, like when you've got a feed, like when you trawl your feed, when you look through your feed, like so many people are obsessed with doing, you see what the algorithm has told you to look at, and nothing more. Like you have to go out of your way relentlessly to find. Like for example, if someone doesn't tag you in something and they put a post up, you're not necessarily going to see it unless you're regularly following and liking their posts, and that is entirely subject to whether Facebook exposes you to that in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably a better explanation. Or like with Google, like if you search for depression, you'll get mental health issues, and you'll get people giving their subjective opinion of how to do it. You won't get like, do you see what I mean? You won't get treatment. You're not exposed to. Let me backtrack. Sorry, I've been up all night just for the reference. Right. So if you're not exposed, if you're not lucky enough, like for example, I said this to quite a few times to people before. Is like someone who had the kind of things that I went through when I was growing up, someone who had the kind of experiences I put myself through, and didn't have that turning point in the psyche, didn't have that dark night of the soul, and then have that through just good fortune or being exposed to the right book or something like that, could spend their entire life living in unconsciousness. And they wouldn't know that there was something. They would fundamentally feel there was something wrong, but they wouldn't know what that thing wrong was, or how to fix it, or how to resolve it. Like, and like, this is kind of what I was getting to before. Like, you, as an artist, this is kind of what I wanted to do. This whole channel, like, there's a moral responsibility, which is, so I'm sort of leading into more about what you were saying. There's a moral responsibility of people that have had these affirmatory or reformatory or reflective experiences to pass that knowledge on, possibly gently but forcefully, to spread that knowledge. And I feel that was something you relate to, like.
Mm-hmm. This is the thing, is that this knowledge is something that can authentically, in my opinion, come only from the unconscious. No, it's not like you can have affirmations from outside to resonate with your interior material, but the thing is that it's to do fundamentally what keeps the lid on the unconscious, in my opinion, is text language. This is what our egos are being sort of like, this is the concrete. Yeah. I mean, we built these wire walls with our own text, glyphic, static material. Yeah. And the thing is that if you understand, like, for example, in Iran or something, in some of these like Muslim countries, you're not allowed to draw.
Really?
You're not allowed to draw. This is against Allah or something. What a fucking bullshit.
Can you tell me what country you're referring to? Do you know which one you mean?
Maybe Syria or Iran or something like this. Like this harsh places, you know, Syria looks like.
Do you mean specifically just drawing?
Drawing. Yeah, you're not allowed to draw.
I know that you can get in a lot of trouble for drawing pictures of Muhammad.
Or anything, man, you're not allowed to draw. You can only write and read text and write, yeah?
I'd like to see some citation on that, just because I've never heard of that, so I'd like to know. Yeah. I'd like to know more about that. That's quite interesting.
So I hope I'm not wrong about this either, but I was fascinated about hearing this. It's like, this is it. This is it. The drawing element of it is where Alien began, where Xeno started. The things that we are trapped in the text patterns, visual patterns that keep our minds fixed in these ideologies. Mm-hmm. When you draw something, this is where unconscious finds a release. This is where our spirit finds a release, and this is where the self-reflection process takes place. It is outside of the constructs and rules of what you believe and what you read about. This is not within that territory anymore, you know?
Sure.
So when you draw something new, if we could train ourselves and our youth generations to be artistic, to start with where the language began from before we started getting caught up in these glyphs.
Sure, yeah. But then, so just to draw back to a slightly different point, is like in the brief you sent, you said environmental and economic disaster. This is something I wanted to come back to because this is kind of related to what we're talking about, of perpetual unconsciousness. So with that,
Yeah.
I was thinking like that's basically what you're talking about, like being trapped in like a social dynamic where it's almost impossible to wake up. It's almost impossible to become conscious because, like, at the neurological level, at the very fundamental sense perception we have, like, we're restricted and overwhelmed, like advertising, blah, 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 blah. But the only thing I was going to say is, in regards to that statement there, I would kind of phrase it willful ignorance. Do you see what I mean? So rather than unconsciousness, so not the lack of consciousness, like we're all conscious, but it's sort of like there's people in power, like this advertising companies, blah 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 blah, who are willfully ignorant to the harm they're causing people because they're driven by profit, for example, things like that.
But it's not even the richest people are causing the same bullshit. It's also middle class or anybody who's like mentally lazy. Or just not sparing any time to figure shit out, to liberate yourself from this trap.
Do you see the correlation with what we were talking about earlier, though, about like having the luxury of being able to do that? Because if, say, for example, like our good friend Mark was working in Morrison's, like when he was working full time, he became unhappy. Because he didn't have any time to reflect. He you know, I won't say any more because that's his personal business. But for example, things like that, people working full-time jobs where they're working, because like my fiance was working before I got signed off properly with my disability benefits. My partner was working sometimes 75-hour weeks on 0-hour contracts.
Yeah.
Because she was only getting paid for like 35 or 40 hours, and it's just like when you're in that kind of like slavery just to survive, like back to what we were saying about the cultural elite in the past and the aristocracy and the mystics and the Pharisees and stuff, like when you don't have time to think, do you know what I mean? It's like that's what I was saying about like the shift needs to be inspired in people. That's the moral responsibility. We have to just get in there and rewrite the virus.
That's the one, and that's what I actually originally meant with assassination of poor styles.
Bring about, I quote, assassinate poorly styles of moral irresponsibility.
Yeah. So we need to witness better styles of behavior, so people are, oh shit, this is possible. You know, we need to have inspire moral courage, in my opinion, through aesthetic. That's through somehow beholding what we could potentially become. You know.
Do you think that could start with subversion, similar to how you're saying with like the xenolinguistics and coming back to breakdancing, or like we were talking about the development of music through innovation?
Yeah.
And it all starts with taking the original baseline concept.
Yeah.
So like to take a ridiculous example, getting the Mona Lisa and drawing a big smiley face on her, like, and then producing that as a piece of artwork, or like just, you know, some ridiculous subversion, and just like subtly influence it, because the what we're up against is a system designed to keep us in one particular eon of time.
We need to figure out how this system operates, and what is this system.
And then
first of all, acknowledging that this operating system is within every one of us, and then start this. That's why that revolution can take place only on individual level, to do with how you choose to spend your time. And because eventually it's your life experience. Let's say I'll give an example of my mother, right? She wanted to save up a lot of money to build a house within, like, let's say 20 years, yeah? Sure. And then she finally be able to have her house and do her painting, right? So you'll finally be able to arrive to the point of presence in enjoying your life after 20 years of chasing that carrot.
And then when you finally get there, it either lacks luster or you're so knackered and uninspired, and you've not practiced it for so long that
even by the
I'm
time
not saying your
mum's
like that. I just mean in general.
Yeah. But she has been changing her values, and she's been arriving to the point where she's don't feel like she's losing out on her life, I guess. Most people, when they reach half-life crisis, they start to feel the death anxiety and feel like, shit, man, we don't have much time. When are we gonna start living? You know? So, in my opinion, where the real revolution takes place is when we subvert our own behavior in a way that we can choose to make form careers where we are not removed from the immediate felt experience, the present.
Well, I would argue that the fundamental way that is going to be possible is with development of technology, or
not necessarily.
least appropriate integration of technology.
Not necessarily.
Because, like, say for example, like you know, you've got just to clarify what I mean, like self-service tills in a supermarket. A load of people get pissed off with them, but theoretically, if you've got someone making sure no one steals anything, and you've got a self-service till, and everyone does what they're supposed to do, like, that relinquishes the need to have those jobs. Now, initially, like, because people complained about, like, automated manufacturing when that first came around, like building cars rather than building it by hand. Now you've got robots that build them far more appropriately, and then you just got people to run that, leaving the options open. So it's like with agricultural development, the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that was just a little side point, like how I think that would be possible,
but
like.
I get you. But then in the end, imagine in 20, 30, 50 years, who's gonna want to eat food made by robots? Unless they have consciousness. Unless they have consciousness of their own, they end up being just like us, and then they don't want to do this job anymore.
Yeah, especially if, like, I don't know, I think superintelligence and the rise of, like, I'm going to make a video specifically about this, which if you want to interview me about it to return the favour, I'd be more than happy, about the rise of the superintelligence and how we're making, heard it here first, folks, we are actually manifesting our own material form of God. Like, our perception of what God is, we are making a God on the planet. That's what I believe is happening, and that's what ultimately technological development is going to lead to, is sentience.
Yeah.
And possibly even like the next stage of human development. But I'll come back to that another time. I'm pointing at the camera just so you know, Martin. I'm like promising the audience I will. But yeah, I do see entirely your point. Like, so
the thing is that what's the point of having food made by a soulless machine? What's the point of having anybody make anything there they don't put their heart into? They're just for the sake of money. Like, it is stupid. Okay. There is no flavor in such life anymore.
But for example, then, like, jobs that could be automated, like data entry. There's so many people that do data entry in England, and it's just literally you just like tick a box, press a button, press enter. I did it for a while. It was like work experience, and it's like those processes, if we optimize technology, don't need to have any human interaction and probably be more efficient without human error, and like that would liberate people from the need to do those jobs, and then you've got an abundance. So like if you have an equal financial system, for example, where you have like, I am kind of ranting at you, sorry dude, but when you have like an equal financial state, so like for example, I can't remember what country it is, but there's a country that has a living wage that everyone gets. And the idea of like a slightly communistic thing of like, obviously you get paid more dependent on your workload and what you're doing in your specialism, but then there's a minimum thing that everyone gets regardless of status or you know what I mean?
I heard about that.
That will develop in time as we automate things more, and I think that is a potential answer to that frustration. But then that reprogramming that we were just talking about needs to take place as well, I think.
That's true, because like when people do have this the resources and all the things covered, like in the time, there's no more excuses to do what you authentically feel like you should be doing. Like there's nothing that stops you from doing that. I mean, to be honest, there's nothing that's stopping you from doing that now either. But it's just a matter of courage.
There's nothing stopping you doing that, but it's having that initial spike, which is where I think people such as you and myself and many others we know do have a kind of moral responsibility to perpetuate that reprogramming. We need to get that. Have you heard of the tipping point? The idea that, like, if more than 10% of the population believes something, it becomes common knowledge and everyone shares the same values after that point. It disseminates that.
Yeah.
Like, we need to be part of that cultural phenomenon.
In my opinion, like, I think there is not too much time we can afford actually on this planet environmentally to create another system of social benefits. I mean, for now, I mean, it would be great that it would be, but is for effective results ASAP, as soon as possible. I think people need ego suicide in whichever fucking way possible.
Kind of like shock treatment.
But I'll tell you why. Because no one is obligated on this planet to breathe this air. No, everyone, we have to understand that we are not supposed to be trapped here. We're here by choice. So, I realized this for myself through my experience. For me, it was a fact.
Yeah.
That I'm here on this planet, in this body, because I choose to live, man. Like, you can tell me whatever the fuck you want me to go and do this or that, but fuck you. Like,
yeah.
You know, like, I do what I feel responsible to do according to my responsibilities. So the people, like, all these pro-life people or something like this, you have to do this and you have to do that, and this is creating a lot of unnecessary anxiety. The thing is that the one main thing, if you choose to live on this planet, the only thing, therefore, you have to do is to be a responsible, moral human being and not betray your meaning. What, you know, man? Like,
I like that, actually. I do like that. Yeah. I see what you mean.
This
leads me on to your next. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, there's no excuses from self-reflecting, of figuring out what is your authentic nature. Now, this circumstances should be possible for doing this, and they become possible from the point that an individual makes that choice and that commitment.
Sure.
It isn't
but as I was arguing earlier, like, if you can even put it down to, like, biologically, like, if you're in a survival mode. So if you're so filled with anxiety that you've been programmed with, if you're so filled with stress and frustration and obsession with your job and your main focus, which is arguably the greatest power of humanity, I'll elaborate on that in a minute. But if your entire focus is on surviving, it triggers the limbic system, and you release more cortisol. You age quicker. You can't physically think and reflect in the same way. Whereas with the paralimbic system, which can be triggered, I think I've got those two the right way around, can be triggered by, like, peaceful meditation, having a walk, drinking some water, relaxing, deep breaths, etc. All these kind of, like, tools we have to do that. Like,
it has to be balanced.
Sure. But if you're in this state that we've created for people, where you're just constantly at the whim of your impulses, it can seem almost insurmountable. Like, take smoking cigarettes, for example. Like, I meditate a lot. I'm very self-conscious. I'm very self-aware. I'm very self-reflective. But I can't fucking stop quitting. I can't stop smoking. Like, because I'm under the whim of that desire. Like, and even something as simple as that for someone like me, like, it's probably gonna kill me. Like, do you know what I mean? It's like, that's just, for someone who lives, despite my mental illness and suffering I have, like, lives quite an easy life, like, you know, like,
that's probably why.
Point? Like, do you see my point?
I see your point, man. I see your point, and actually, you just need to understand what is that actual stimulation that you need. And
well, you can't see it, but I'm wearing a nicotine patch, and I haven't smoked a cigarette for about 6 hours now, so I'm doing quite well.
Okay, I'm gonna cut to the chase. What I mean, actually, when, let's say, within 10, 20, 30 years, We
Yeah.
do have social benefits. Everyone has the roof and shelter and basic income, so you can afford the time to do what you want. A lot
Sure.
of people are gonna be lazy.
A lot of people going to
every-
sit on their ass, masturbate a lot,
yeah,
talk
okay,
shit,
and fine,
play
that's
video
fine.
games.
But you have a choice. You choose to do this, for example, and that a lot of point, people still gonna be depressed, and they're not gonna understand probably why, and probably because everything is peaceful and sorted and de-anxietized, things calm. Something's still lacking. People are gonna try to navigate towards where is that nutrition that I'm missing. I'm missing maybe sports. Maybe I'm missing some more extreme experience in my life. Maybe I'm missing communion with other people. You know, so
Yeah.
in a lot of ways, all that we need to do, all that we need to have, is just free time for us to be able to pay attention on the things that we actually need. I think.
Yeah.
So it's just
but then,
that,
for example,
like,
you use depression. Depression is an example there. I think education is incredibly important when it comes to the mind. It's de-emphasized in culture. We talk about physical wealth, physical health, you know, and people are. I do find, not necessarily in my life, although quite a lot, but like especially in like popular culture and social culture, there are a lot more people naturally having that reflective thought process. It does seem, whether I'm just a naive hippie, but it seems like that kind of self-awareness and that reflectiveness is entering society in a bigger way. And the main thing we can do to propagate that and to proliferate that is to educate people from a standpoint of, as you said to me before, lead by example. And then also this reprogramming of the viruses that are used to keep us in this perpetual state of fear.
Mm-hmm.
So like social media, for example. Social media, for example, is a great one because, like, in England we've just had the general election, and we've got nigh on every newspaper slating in every conceivable way, some of which quite abhorrent, Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party and the Green Party and all these other parties. And yet social media is telling an entirely different story and actually sort of nigh on won the battle, if you see what I mean. Like, we've got these new social tools to do that. This reprogramming process is quite interesting.
Oh man, the politics is not the place to look for social reprogramming.
Sure, no. But what I mean, the tools that are now available that can be used. Sorry. After you, bro.
Oscar Wilde. Remember his quote that nature imitates art. Remember that one? This is the one. He was talking about that, and I think it's fucking true. Even fucking birds imitate breakcore patterns.
Yeah.
And
or
this
like
is the
mobile
thing.
phone ringtones.
In my opinion, this is how we actually always great achievements have occurred in cultures, is through aesthetics of spirit. And I think people need to feel that, to resonate with what our hearts yearn for, because we all have unexpressed legends within us, unexpressed heroes, myths that we yearn to realize within our life. Yes. Yeah. So when you, for example, take a psychedelic trip, one of the most common things that happen, you have a contact with the other, everything that's not you, or that's at least it seems so.
Mm-hmm. Can I add a little addendum? Not only do you contact another seemingly, what previously was you becomes other. Does that make sense?
No, dude, that sounds way too fucking weird. I didn't get that.
All right, okay. So, like, say for example, you're now when you take a psychedelic trip, you're able to observe your own thoughts and inner processes as external or as a visible thing, whereas previously they were unconscious.
No, I have real questions whether that is at least my own at all. I'm not sure about that. What I feel most often is example. during these, what is so central about saving the planet in order psychedelics and saving the planet is to do with seeing better examples, better images, better ideas, better affirmations. So of course, because of that fact that a lot of people, okay, first of all, our tendency to imitate, since the moment we're born, we're imitating everything that we're seeing.
That's how we learn, like.
Yeah. Now this is the cool shit. Now, like when you see something from a psychedelic domain, which is not usually beheld in the human social domain, there is this tendency, what Terence McKenna called, that humans are incredibly susceptible to becoming what they behold.
That's cool. Yeah,
now,
go on.
with psychedelics is similar thing. There comes this thing, the alien or the god or whatever, Jesus appearing as Bill Hicks or Michael Jackson or whatnot, is through styles, through radical and fucking cool, authentic, hip style, showing you, like a brother, like an older brother, showing you an example. You can fucking do this.
Yeah.
Be me. Do what I do. Don't just go... don't just like, oh my god, this is impossible. Fucking observe, pay attention, do what we do. And so this is the thing. Of course, not everybody can take psychedelics, but these shamanic figures who are able, these are always been artists, and they bring the novel styles, novel aesthetics. And because of the human condition of imitating everything, I think this could be one of the potential resolutions for bringing about cooler, more aesthetic examples, and that at least through our production, what we produce, the ideas, imagery, fundamentally the content that we share, I think, is that the essence of it. And then it's just like, bringing on a new wave of aesthetic, and where does it all really come down to? What is most art really all about? What is human meaning all about? And
so one of the things that occurred to me while you're talking was like, for me, in psychedelic trips specifically, is the first time I've ever seen anything that I've never seen before. Like something that I can't conceive of, like a totally novel experience, like dimethyltryptamine, for example. Like the idea that like you smoke it and then you go back and you can't really remember it. Like a lot of people can't remember because it's such an intense experience, they can't process it. But the more times you return to it, the more you're able to retain knowledge. Or if you practice lucid dreaming techniques and then you apply those lucid dreaming techniques and that passive, like putting the ego in the background and having it as a passive observer, things like that, you're able to actually retain more of the data that you're receiving. And then you see these things like one of mine was, it was a fractal shape that the only way to describe it that sounds any way logical, that actually accurately describes it, is a trans-dimensional shape. Like it couldn't exist in this reality. And I've never seen anything like that before outside of a math.
It's like you're wrapping your head around, how the fuck, right? How am I ever supposed to say this?
Sure, yeah. And like I've had it with ketamine as well. I know you're not necessarily a fan of that yourself, but I've had it with ketamine where like I'll save you the details because it's a very long, elaborate trip. On one of my trips, I saw one of these trans-dimensional shapes appear, and I telepathically said to the entity I was communicating with at the time, I know that sounds a bit crazy for new viewers, you'll get used to this, but like telepathically communicating with this being which I perceived to be external, and I said, can you explain to me in simpler terms in a way I can relate to what it is you're trying to show me? And then it morphed, went and turned into a candle, which instantly I thought in my head, like I got this essence and this sensation of like it's an engine. It was a spiritual engine. It was a process. They were showing me like a metaphysical device or of some sort, and things like that. That like there's all this knowledge out there. It's like if you got like a mathematician, I think you probably agree with this. If you got like a mathematician or like someone who studied geometry, or like a physicist to take dimethyltryptamine or something. I think there's probably loads of anecdotal stuff on the internet about that. but like how they would interpret these pan-dimensional, trans-dimensional shapes, they could probably draw it. They could probably navigate it. And there's all this data out there in this sort of psychedelic realm that whether it's real, useful, false, true, lies, whatever, it's still data. It's still data that we can't get from anywhere else. And like,
And yeah, and it's an interesting thing, and it's like I've been speculating a lot about what this really is, but I think fundamentally it's important to understand that it's the language. In my opinion, it feels like the language of the spirit. You know,
yeah,
I think there's something about the language of surrealists and filmmakers of realizing the impossible dreams.
Yeah,
And maybe one of the main premonitions of human nature for who are we and what we ought to be doing and what we're designed by nature to be doing. It's to me to be like existentially we could be answering our own apathy, resolving our own apathy by pursuing the realization of the impossible dreams, just simply technically knowing how, you know, and doing it. And
so the
then
way I would relate to
doing
that is things like science fiction.
Yeah, I think it's something to do with that.
It's like we so many times art life has imitated art, like you were saying earlier, the Oscar Wilde quote, like telecommunicators, like the flip up devices, classic example in Star Trek, which was brought out in the 60s. Now we all have one of them in our pocket, like 40, 50 years later, and that's just a normal thing. Like, and it takes the visionary state, it takes the imagination, it takes conjuring from that other place fantasy, whether it's phantasm as in received information or whether it's self-generated information from the imagination. It's sorry, I kind of lost my thread, but you see what I mean? Like, that's where these things come from. This is where we get progression in society in many arenas.
Yeah, well, this is the thing, returning back to the xenolinguistic, the thing that comprehending the alien and the unknown. I think that the visions of the impossible, visions of the unspeakable, that's something that is an evolutionary challenge for us to push the envelope of our communication.
Sure,
it's something that even if the fact that we cannot rationally conceive of this being possible, but the effects of doing the impossible is amazing, man. Like, it's like it defies your rational thing of what is possible, what is not, because like irrationally it is all textually, you know what I mean? But then you realize that human nature really is we through these visions, you know, witness something that is not yet possible, though we make it possible.
Sure.
Shit, man, we did the impossible, you know? It's amazing feeling, and I think this is how evolution works. This is how we transcend our limitations.
Sure.
Every time with the psychedelics has always been the same feeling, especially with DMT. Oh shit, it feels like I'm doing the impossible right now, you know?
Well, for me, with the few experiences I've had with DMT, I'm not as quite as experienced as you, but I very much felt like every experience I've had that has broken down a boundary in terms of my perception of what spirituality means, what visionary means, what divine inspiration means, things like that, you know. Like, so I, as you probably remember, I thought because of some negative experiences I had from my suicide attempt and stuff, that I had entered hell. I've talked to you about that before quite a bit, haven't I?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so DMT made me realise, similarly to like with LSD, made me realise that I could not hallucinate, or that I could hallucinate and it be a positive, enjoyable experience. DMT made me realise that hell was simply a matter of misapprehension of altered state or an altered reality. And for
I
me,
see.
that was a huge gift. And then from there, I've been able to go, what's in this reality? Like what? And it's expanded my non-judgment. Do you see what I mean? So it's not just visionary experiences that I've had. Like in fact, arguably most of my DMT experiences leading up to the one where I had the revelation I was just discussing, I was locked down. Like it was almost negative experience, and then I realized that like I don't know whether you can relate to this, but like, so this is slightly off topic, but I'll come back. With DMT, it showed me that I had preconceptions that I was trying to project onto deity or to a higher spiritual reality. And so what that reality was doing when I entered it was going, you're wrong. This is the way it is, and I couldn't accept it because like it's so common. Like people with the religious experience, like say that's what I was saying. Like with the physicist, if a physicist entered the dimethyltryptamine realm, they'd probably interpret it in terms of physics or like higher cognitive processes associated with their understanding of physics. Whereas for me,
I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that because it's very emotional experience as well. It's very emotional.
Like I find like one of the main thing I got from DMT basically was that I was telling, for lack of a better way of putting this, I was telling God how to act, and thus it was reflecting back to me that behavior, judgmental, nasty, aggressive, terrifying. Whereas that was just my perception of what God was, because I rejected Christianity when I was growing up, for example, stuff like that. But then also, similar, I've had the same thing with LSD and DMT, where I've come round from the experience and I've gone like, shit, that has showed me that like this was always there. Like this level of reality was always there. Like serenity, the acceptance of. Like just because we were talking about DMT and the visionary experience, I just thought it's not just a creative or data flow. It's like there's something mystical to it. Those kind of experiences, and whether that's because I wanted to get into that. I wanted to ask you about that because one of the next things on here is on your brief is talking about cultural relativism, spiritual improvement junkies oblivious of their shadow and general juvenilities, and then from shamanic origins of human religious traditions, for example. So that's sort of what I wanted to draw the conversation around to, is like the mystical, the transcendent, or the divine, and your opinions on that, because I obviously have strongly held views, but I want to hear about yours.
Okay, then in this case, like I think it's coming down really a lot to the imagination. And if you look at this is how the experience of the mystical for me was how I discovered hip-hop, actually, before I knew anything about hip-hop, because at the origins of it was creating something from nothing. It's something to do that. And I think this is how evolution of consciousness works, is through realizing the something from the idea space into the material.
So taking something from the purely thought to physical.
Purely like intangible. And from where it's the dimension of impossible dreams and potentialities of anything, and then somehow figuring a way how to create that, and or just intuitively finding a way to create that. So that's how I find is the origins of shamanism is really the emergence of artistry in human species.
Sure. But then in terms of, because you use the word spiritual improvement junkies oblivious of their shadow, so that echoes to me, or like when I first read that, I thought like thinking about people that have experienced zazen or sudden enlightenment, and then they go around acting really preachy and arrogant, and because they've disowned all their shadow, they've increased the size of their shadow through that theoretically profoundly developmental experience.
It's that is just a con of an ego. I find you may have gone to South America and do your ayahuasca trip or something like this, but then again, the ego finds a way, a con, to display all the cool sides of it, and but maybe missing out on saying some of the horrifying or humbling experiences that smashed your ego, you know. So there's a tendency to bring the beast back up. It's like in those horror movies, you're trying to fucking kill the beast, but always back.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of why I was mentioning my hell experience earlier as well, because that informed a lot of my spiritual belief system. Because and what gave me this, basically, I considered it like a baptism of fire. Like, I was plunged into what I perceived to be hell, and that taught me enormous emotional, physical, and psychological strength that meant that when I did experience the true psychedelic state, and actually was able to access these higher states of consciousness, I was equipped. Like, I didn't have to learn to lucid dream, for example. I could just do it because of those experiences, because do you know what I mean? Like, it's similar to what you were saying about, like, people ignore and don't publicize the negativity. It's like that's actually the breeding ground for true spiritual development, is the suffering.
Exactly, man. The poetry of it all. Like, this is the point, I think, why actually we have depressions on a collective scale, not, you know, on a spiritual level, because we are, I feel personally, many feel that way, is the disappointment and lacking disappointment in displaying the moral courage to confess of our humanness. How many poets and comedians do we really have around us, you know, who have that courage to say, oh, I'm no fucking angel, you know, and to be able to release those demons of shame and confess about those things. There's something righteous about and beautiful about that. And it's just that we have this programming when we come back, maybe even from psychedelic trips. The question is, what is it that you come back to? Let's say you went for a year of travel around the world to exotic places, and you feel like now a different person. And now it's your job time again. You got to go and make that money up again, and you're gonna come back to the place you once escaped from to make money. And
ironically, less equipped to deal with the environment you left. Do you know what I mean?
And you're back in the same thing, and you're expected to be the same person with the same values. In order to keep that job, you gotta keep up those values, and that's why the ego comes back with the same things of trying to enforce superiority and disowning the imperfections and weaknesses, in my opinion.
Cool. So what I was going to say, the very last thing we got to on your brief then was the shamanic origins of human religious traditions, to alchemy, to psychokinesis, to hip-hop, and the psychedelic renaissance. Let's hear a little bit about, elaborate a little bit on what that statement sort of means. Okay.
So originally we can see that the shamanic activity with the psychedelics and the emergence of written language and was let's say the beginning of art history and the beginning of really, you know, history as such, but it's directly to do with that we designed it. So it came about out of some kind of obviously psychedelic intoxication of one kind or another, and this is where the religious impulse started evolving in us, the actively performing spiritual creativity. So we became more than just animals, we became creative animals.
Well, just a quick addendum. The development of the human brain, as they've mapped through, as far as I gather, there's a uniquely part of the mammalian brain, I can't remember what they call it, but it's like the outer mammalian brain, where we have this ability to visualize in general. That only evolved in fairly recent times, and there's arguments that was. So, like, similarly, it could be psychedelic drug use, or it could be psychedelic states, or it could be trance states, or drumming, or shamanic initiation through extreme states of mind, even in the hunt or something like that. But the ability to use the right brain and the left brain I know I don't like that's not actually technically accurate, but the unification of that, there's a little point that unites the hemispheres that got stronger in the modern human brain that gave us, is that sort of, sorry, I cut you off, didn't I, to sort of interject that. But I was just saying that's like, it's the schizotypal thing, the ability to perceive altered states and to believe visualization and to have visualization so strong that it alters your perception of reality is quite, as far as I'm aware, a uniquely, not only human thing, but modern human thing, with a certain part of the brain that developed in Homo sapien. Just to add that bit.
Where there's nothing unlikely of a possibility that we may have, like as primates, without egos, or very much of egos at all. Yeah, most animals have the natural sensitivity of smell to feel what foods are okay, what are not. We are also some way pre-literate in that moment. We're sensitive, we're more body oriented, so we were like testing all kinds of foods as monkeys, you know, as primates. At some point, whichever way, I don't know, like, but as far as I saw in a mushroom vision, it was the mushroom that showed to me where did the human language began. And it's
Sure.
like, why would it be the mushroom vision educating me on art history lessons? You know?
Yeah, I fully respect that that's your experience, but I as I haven't had that teaching from that plant, I can't pass. I'm slightly skeptical, but your point is still valid, if you see what I
The
mean.
thing is that, yes, and this is where we're coming down all the way to maybe, let's get past through alchemy, maybe, yeah, we can, and into the hip hop, because this is where the immediate thing of value of what really is knowledge and not education is personal knowledge. We have knowledge not only of our personal experience, but we have the DNA knowledge stored in our muscle memory.
Like genetic memory, you mean?
Yes. So what often seems to happen, like this is a very often reoccurrence in psychedelic trips for many, is that when the reducing valve of the reduced consciousness of the ego basically is dissolved, what is left there is often exposed the information stored in the DNA through all this fucking time. We have this knowledge. Now, scientists trying to go do the archaeology things and trying to find the facts externally, but I think that we should really be looking in the memory of the DNA.
So the way I would relate to that is instinctual and inherent memory. So like for a good example is children have nightmares about being chased by monsters with big teeth. They don't. I can't remember where I got this example from, but like they don't. It was a verified fact wherever I saw it. But like they studied children's dreams and nightmares, and it was like they didn't dream about like pedophiles or being murdered by humans or like being run down by a car as their nightmares. They dreamed of horrible, horrific monsters in the night chasing them, which is instinctual inherent memory. It's like that could arguably be what you're talking about, like or similar genesis. Like I think there's some element of truth in what you're saying basically, and that was how I relate to it.
Also, I think because of these inherent traumas in evolutionary the phobias that we have inherited from our ancestors, it could also explain why is it that we do have such a fear of psychedelic experiences. And some say, for example, like Alexander Shulgin said, that at some point when we were primates, that when we had a psychedelic intoxication, when we were confronted by an animal like a beast, a tiger, we had our defenses down. We no longer had this ability of self-protection, so we saw that members of our tribe are being lost because they're tripping on these exotic things where they become loving beings, but they are no match for the tiger, you know.
Yeah, I mean, you could take the drugs out of that and that would still be the case. Like, you would have an inherent genetic memory, an instinctual memory of that violence and trauma from even possibly pre-human memory. if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
So what I was going to say was that, like, I don't know if you've heard this, but like, it enhances your, like, lower doses of psychedelics actually increase your visual spatial awareness and your fear response. So they'd actually be better equipped unless they were on like mind-blowing doses.
Yeah.
Depending on that. Anyway, right. So I'm knackered. This has been great. This has been absolutely great, and we should pick this up another time, if that's all right.
Yeah, I didn't finish saying the whole thing.
Okay.
But okay.
All right. Okay. I'll tell you what. Like, have a closing statement, and I shall not interrupt this time.
Okay. So, where did we leave off?
So we
The
got
beast.
to
Why did you mention the
Renaissance.
beast?
Oh, that was talking about inherent memory, and you were talking about how there's things in genetic memory that we can access through the psychedelic state.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing why I connected it straight to hip hop, is because that's where the value of the knowledge is something credible that we can speak of and people will hear us. This is of value because it's not something that we read from a book. This is not education. This is knowledge. And so psychedelics most often expose and make visible exactly that. Not only your own knowledge and gives value to that, yeah? But also to your ancestral knowledge and the whole thing. So it shows the original content of what is of actual value for us to be sharing with one another. So you may not consider this to be true. You may be asking me for evidence or something like this. But when I speak of it, it has value because it's an experience. And that's really at the essence of hip hop. That's why I actually find that hip hop these days is a sort of a sustained and transformed version of alchemy, of shamanic activity.
That's quite
And yeah, it's taken so many different elements. But since the hip hop emerged, we really had a lot of psychedelic activity going on, of subversion of language on all different mediums. So we never really had such advancements of language as scratching, breaking, remixing. We never had the ability before to do that.
It's this free form poetry concept. It's the idea that like the prefrontal lobe activity stops, that critical inner voice stops, and you just speak what's in your like soul.
Yeah. You're basically the constipations are removed, and you're being able to flow. You're able to fly. You know.
I've found. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, that's the thing about what I love about hip hop. Probably is because we're now able to reclaim the authenticity of our expression and liberate our spirit from these linguistic constipations.
Cool.
So, therefore, I think where to place most of the bets in what's going to lead the market is the examples of authenticity and hyper-authenticity.
Okay, clarify, please.
So authenticity is an expression of authentic, real character, right? Shedding and leaving behind all the pretensions of the past. And the hyper-authenticity, that is already something that goes beyond words. So, because if you see that the words and text as such is not such a natural language, that means hyper-authenticity is going to transform our language in something that is more music-like than static, you know?
Yeah, nice.
So we're going to become more of what the kind of original creatures that we actually are, is just musical creatures. And that means that when our language transforms from being, chasing the answer, our language will become transformed to facing the answer. That we're not always looking for an answer, but that every sound and communication that we make is we are no longer chasing anything. We have found it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're present. We're here, and we're feeling it. And this is where I think we're gonna lead to the next level of communication, advancement of communication in our species, and I think it's gonna happen through cooler style.
Cool. So, like, when you said hyper authenticity, initially I actually thought I don't know whether this is what you meant, but I thought you meant like because you said with authenticity, so that to me that struck me as like, to use a weird example, but so you've got the true individual that's fully authentic as themselves,
and
as their externalized projection of who they believe they are. Whereas whereas in freestyle, this is what I thought you meant with the hyper authenticity. In freestyle, you're almost not even in control of what you're saying. You're ultimately bared in this musical creative form. It's a bit like when you solo in jazz, like you've learned the words, you've learned the things, so you know roughly what you're doing, but it's more like channeling. It's more like you're guiding intent down from something greater within yourself. It's not with true freeform MCing. That's why I like watching battle rap and stuff like that. So that was just what the word hyper authenticity triggered in my mind. I thought it might be an interesting point.
I would count this battle rap and MCing and all this is still within the realm of authenticity, because there is a limit to how authentic our language permits us to be.
Sure, yeah.
Like when you take the example of linguistic ecstasy in improvisation that happens in a DMT states, that's something to be considered hyper authenticity.
What was that word that you reminded me of earlier? That means like a non-verbalized speech.
Glossolalia.
Glossolalia, that's it. I've been trying to remember that word for ages.
Yeah.
Is that sort of what you were mentioning there?
Yeah, and that's the one as well. It's also the visual language of it as well, and this is something that we can speak of ourselves with text, with true enough. We can speak true enough, right? That's authentic. We can be authentic enough, but our language, when it comes down to really expressing our being most authentically, is gonna have to have different means of communication. That you see that the tendency of the words that we use today,
it pigeonholes things. It clarifies. It doesn't.
Yeah, it's more like this is an expression of the reduced state of consciousness. Like it is something that is like a bug. We need to debug ourselves from this style of communication to more effective communication that is centered on the immediate felt presence. That's something that
reminds me of something that I was possibly wanting to discuss. Have you ever had a conversation where I hope you can relate to this, because I've only met a few people that have this experience, and it's like you talk with your mind, and then the words are merely just like an adjunct, just like it's basically telepathy. And I've written this whole document about it called transverbal synesthetic communication, but the basic gist of it is that rather than, so like say I said to you something like, on a Wednesday we fried the Friday biscuits on an afternoon on a Saturday, or just some weird combination of things, but like in my face you saw love, warmth, affection, the desire to embrace, or the desire to be violent, or any sort of other things that was contrary to that. All you would need to do was make, I don't know whether I'm explaining this very well. Have you ever had any form of telepathic communication in your experience?
Yeah.
So like, yeah, I've had it. I remember I had this friend Lucy, and we used to talk in images. Like I used to get very strong visual images in my mind, and I clarified with her many times after we'd had these dialogues, and she said that she would also get these visual images of what we were talking about, and sensations arising. I've had this with quite a few people.
Yeah.
So you get sensory data that is almost irrelevant to the words you're saying, and the words are merely like a trigger point, or an adjunct, or like something to focus on rather than the actual content of the dialogue. Ooh. Any thoughts on that? This will have to be the final thought though, because we're on like 4 gigs of stuff now. I need to make sure it's all processing properly, and then we can reconvene in a bit. So.
Yeah. I mean, to me, this is nothing unusual, and often, like when I talk in a very immersive a very immersive conversation with someone, I get the visuals, and I suspect it's something to do with the intentionality of the information conveyed through the sound. So it's somehow, yeah, it's not even the words. Sometimes I feel like maybe the words kind of like trigger associations, but sometimes the conversation goes elsewhere, and mainly because of the frequency of the voice box, the intentionality that travels through the sound, triggering visions that sometimes even look different from what is being described. You know?
Yeah. So it's that's why I use the word transverbal and synesthetic. So it's like, I'll send you the document, and then I'd love you to come on the channel and ask me about this, because I've got a lot to say about it. Because it's something I've been writing a lot about, because I want to use it to help people that have uncontrollable hallucinations in schizophrenia and psychosis. And it's a way of reprogramming these negative experiences to be a useful tool, similar to how I've done in my own practice. Anyway, the point being that like the overall, so if it's like you zoomed out and the words are just as irrelevant as like the body language is to the words, if you see what I mean. You've got like an overview, and you get sensations arising, you get emotions arising, and it's like an empathetic resonance, and then that can be accompanied for the more open-minded, or the more subtly aware, to actually, because this is what I was thinking about. The reason I mentioned this is because you were saying about this hyper authenticity, and I'm thinking like, what's the way you could do that? And it would be through communicating in that sort of fashion, if you see what I mean. Like that kind of is hyper authenticity, because you're conveying with your deepest psyche and every part of you like a whole message, and the words are almost as transient as the hand gestures, or do you see what I mean? And that could be a way that, like, if people would learn to do that over time, and like it became a more commonly practiced thing, and people were trained in the sensitivity and how to read that information and how to respond to it and interact with it, that might actually become like a new, not higher, but like an extension of communication. So it's refreshing to me to hear that you know what I mean. Yeah, so that's just something I want to mention. So we'll come back to that another time. I'm really tired, and I need a cup of coffee.
Just to point this nail on the coffin of this podcast, like, I think it just as to what is the most essential that I guess I would want to say is that we don't need the highest sophisticated technology to permit our authentic being to express itself naturally, you know? That we simply, I think the programming that we have in our minds is mainly the comprehension, the limited comprehension of who we actually are, what is, how is our natural being like, and that our egos and our programming doesn't distort the quality of our natural being.
Cool. That was a very articulate sentence. I'm not sure I quite grasped all of it, but I'm happy for that to be the finishing point.
The need for our egos to have the permission for our being to be, you know, just let yourself be. Don't yeah.
So like similarly how you have like submission to God in a previous spiritual traditions of the more archaic and then pre-rational era and the superstitious era, and in Buddhism and Hinduism and various other spiritual traditions, you have the submission of the ego to the self, and then you can have the submission of the self to higher perceptions, and but it's the integration of all of those things so they become one whole entity. Yeah, we have to, like, you know, become real with ourselves, and, you know, have the courage to admit that we are primates after all, that we have emotions, that we have lots of infidelities, and then we're still trying to understand reality and do lots of crazy shit, you know, like we have to accept a lot about ourselves instead of just trying to keep up this some kind of self-deceptive image of who we'd like to be. Sure, like rather than living under the illusion of who we think we are, like actually
exactly
authenticity, basically.
Yeah.
Cool. Right, so I'm gonna end the recording now. So wave goodbye. but stay on the line. So bye bye YouTube, bye bye. Thanks for watching. I've been Dr. B, otherwise known as Schizophreniforms. This is Martins, otherwise known as Mercurial Eyes. We shall be seeing you later.
Yeah.
Bye bye.